Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we are going to have a little chat about who gets what in Warhammer 40,000, and this is brought on entirely by the Sisters of Battle Castigator, because I've seen quite a few people asking, why don't Space Marines get access to what is essentially a glorified Predator variant again? What's going on? I mean, when you look at this thing, it is, for all intents and purposes, a Predator. Admittedly, it's got a more impressive main armament, it has an actual battle cannon on the turret, and it's got an extra armament on the front in the form of that heavy bolter sticking out Lehman Russ style. And on the surface of it, it is a valid question, because this is essentially what Space Marines already have, except Sisters of Battle have got it instead. And you can sit there and think to yourself, why is this being restricted? Why aren't Space Marines getting access to something that really, if you took off all the fancy filigree, took away the statues and the braziers on top of the exhaust there, like that would just fit perfectly fine into a Space Marines army because, well, that is their tank. It has been their tank for quite some time. What the hell is this? Now, of course, the easiest and quickest answer to the question of why don't Space Marines get this is because Games Workshop doesn't want them to have it, but that's not quite as satisfying. And the thing is, there is plenty of precedent for stuff being only available to some and not all, where you might assume that actually everyone would benefit from having access to things. A prime example of this is in fact a Predator variant, and it's the Baal Predator. This is a Blood Angels only tank. You cannot take this if you are not Blood Angels or Blood Angel successors, and yet all it is a Predator with flamethrowers on it. That's literally it. It's just got heavy flames on the side. I think it's an Inferno cannon or flamer on the top. I forget what it's called. But you would think to yourself, well, if Blood Angels have got that, why doesn't everyone? The answer in this particular instance is Blood Angels were a first founding chapter. They found the STC for this, and as such, the Mechanicum can get lost. That is basically what it boils down to. They don't want to share this. This is theirs. This is what they want. And they have kept it. Now you could say to yourself, why don't the Imperium step in? This is something that could see significant and helpful use in other Space Marine chapters. And really the answer to that is the Blood Angels don't want them to have it. They want it, it's theirs, they're keeping it, and you can get lost, is basically what it boils down to. Now that in turn can be extrapolated into, well, Blood Angels need cool and fancy stuff to make them different. They are one of the chapters that had their own codex and now has its own supplement. They are one of the chapters that have a significant number of non-codex units, and as such, this being one of them, Games Workshop want to keep it that way to keep them special. That's what it's for. It might not make the most sense in terms of sharing the wealth, but that's just how it is, and there is an in-universe explanation for it, even though that explanation essentially boils down to, no, it's mine, hands off. Very similar approach with the Stormfang gunship and the transport variation of this as well. The Space Wolves love this thing. They absolutely love it. For them, there is no greater aerial vehicle. This is the prime, the top draw option, and it's also theirs. Although in fairness to the Space Wolves, Hellfrost weapons are powered by crystals that can only be found on Fenris, so they do have something of a vested interest in keeping this stuff to themselves, because let's face it, it deters visitors, and they're not great with the whole tourism thing, are they? Now, that is not the same as, say, a Wolfen Dreadnought, so Murderfang being the classic example of that. Wolfen Dreadnoughts are because the Space Marine inside the Dreadnought that's been interred in the sarcophagus is succumbing to the curse of the Wolfen, and so that is something that is very Space Wolf specific, because they are the ones who suffer from that genetic issue. That is one thing. That is something where you can look at it and go, well, reasonably, no other chapter has the curse of the Wolfen, and as such, no other chapter will be able to get Dreadnoughts that are, part Wolfen. This is not the same as that, though. This is just a box. It's a box with engines with a giant gun in it, and you could very realistically and reasonably say, why the hell doesn't everyone else get to use these? It's because the Space Wolves do not want them to. And let's not even get started with the Dark Angels. The Dark Angels have got the Dark Shroud, they've got the Dark Talon, the Vengeance, and they've got the Nephilim. No one else gets those. No one else is allowed to look at them. Get out, these belong to us, you can't have them, etc, etc. The Dark Angels are an incredibly secretive chapter, they have access to some really interesting technology, and if you would like that technology, you are more than welcome to get the fuck out, is basically what it boils down to. Then we get onto things like the Corvus Blackstar. Now the Corvus Blackstar is an interesting one because this is something where the Inquisition went, and this is now ours. The Death Watch is ours, this is ours, no one else can use it. Again, does it make a huge amount of sense in terms of realism, in terms of making sure that every chapter is as equipped as it can possibly be to fight the Xenos threat? Not really, but it does do a good job of showing just how fractured internally the Imperium is. These might all be Space Marine chapters, they might all be fighting on the same side, mostly, and they might all be in it for the protection of humanity to some degree. Dark Angels, let's face it, are more bothered about chasing down their treacherous kin than actually doing anything else, but that's a topic for a different occasion. But there is still factionalism, there is still infighting, there is still cases of, we love this, we think this is great, and as a result, we don't want you to have it, do not touch this, it is ours. Now, returning very briefly to the Dreadnought question, this is the Blood Angels Librarian Dreadnought. Now, you would think that being able to have librarians that can continue to serve after being functionally wrecked would be a fantastic thing, but only Blood Angels can do it. Now, this is nothing to do with the variant of Dreadnought. This is actually everything to do with the Blood Angels themselves. They have a much stronger connection when it comes to being able to use their psycho powers, and as such, they are the only ones who can withstand being placed in a Dreadnought sarcophagus and still continue to be able to use those powers. They are essentially just too strong to not be librarians after they've been wrecked. The only exception to the Blood Angels Librarian Dreadnoughts are ones that serve in the Death Watch, and you can guess where they've come from. They are librarians that fell while serving in the Death Watch, who then were interred and decided to stay with the Death Watch. Very, very rare happenstance, but it does happen. And even then, the librarian himself is a Blood Angel. That's how that works. Now, as someone pointed out on Twitter, not really sure why Grey Knights can't do this. That's a very good question, actually. That feels more like an oversight than anything else. You would expect Grey Knights, with their immense psychic ability, to be able to absolutely rock being in a Dreadnought after they've had a couple of slaps to both hearts, but they, for some reason, can't have these, which actually doesn't make a huge amount of sense. It would be nice for that to be changed. But this all takes us back to this, the Castigator. It is a Rhino chassis vehicle. It is basically a Predator. It has, instead of a autocannon or twin las cannon, or in the case of the Blood Angels, a whack-off Great Flamer, a battle cannon. And it's got an extra heavy bolter, and that's the only difference. Why is it not available to all the other Space Marines? Because the Sisters of Battle want it. And that's basically what it boils down to. That is what all of this boils down to. One of the things that is most interesting about this stuff is the fact that, really, if we're talking completely bluntly and honestly, the reason that these various factions get this when other factions can't is basically because it gives each of these different factions something unique to play with. It gives them a little bit of additional flavour on top of what they already had. There is also the precedent, of course, of the Sisters of Battle having access to things like the Repressor or the Exorcist, which is admittedly kind of a glorified whirlwind, but let's not get into that, and the Immolator, which you could argue is not that far off from the Bile Predator, thinking about it, but still, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of in-universe factionalism, of in-universe tribalism, of everyone fighting in the Imperium for the same cause, but still maintaining very distinct lines between what they want and what the other people fighting alongside them want. There are still things that they will look at and say, this is mine, for no reason other than I've decided this is mine. And this is just another instance of that. Would it be cool to have this as a Space Marine vehicle? Well, yeah, but it would also be cool to be able to take Leman Russes and Baneblades, and God knows what else, but you can't. It would be cool to be able to have a Corvus Blackstar for your Space Wolves, but you can't. This is a mixture of fun world building and a good way of showing that actually unification isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and being able to make every single faction and sub-faction slightly unique, slightly different, and slightly more interesting flavour than if everyone simply shared everything. Now you might think to yourself, right now, okay, but what if they could share everything? What if they did just have access to everything? Surely that would be more fun, and that would actually allow for more creativity when it came to things like list building or building themed armies. Well, you might be onto something there, but there is currently something that looks very much like that, and that is, of course, Primaris Space Marines. So if we take a look at the start collecting side of things for Space Marines, we have start collecting Vanguard Space Marines. We have Combat Patrol Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels. And you know what? Those three boxes, particularly the Blood Angels, the Space Wolves, and the Dark Angels, they're fine. They're absolutely fine. They are decent. Each of them is a decent basis for starting a Primaris army. But do they have anywhere near the flavour do they have anywhere near the same level of interest, anywhere near the same level of unique identity as if, say, Combat Patrol Blood Angels had a Librarian Dreadnought in it? No. Would Combat Patrol Space Wolves feel more representative of Space Wolves and their unique approach and the fact that they are, considerably different from other chapters, especially when it comes down to Codex compliant chapters versus Space Wolves? If they had something like Murderfang in there, would that make that box at least visually more interesting and separate them out? Yeah, it would. Would Combat Patrol Dark Angels be that much more interesting if there was something in there that no one else got? And let's face it, they've got a few things to choose from. Yeah, it would be more interesting. When it comes to being able to share and share alike, there are pluses and minuses. The fact is, it makes it easier to build forces up because you have more overall choice and you're able to pick stuff more easily because everything can take the same thing. On the other hand, it takes away personality. It takes away what makes each thing individual and unique. The result of Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels, and I will say actually, even Deathwatch, because I'd totally forgotten Deathwatch were down there, they are essentially interchangeable. All that kind of specialised technology, all of that stuff that they've hoarded for themselves, all their unique approaches to warfare, they're lost with these boxes. Because these boxes don't represent what makes these chapters different to each other. These boxes are what happens if you can just switch and change everything and everyone has access to the same thing. Yeah, it does mean that you could pick up any one of these and use them as any of the others. If you didn't mind filing down, a couple of shoulder pads, I felt you wouldn't even need to file down a couple of shoulder pads because you would just get upgrade sprues with the standard sprues in those boxes. You would be able to buy Dark Angels, the Combat Patrol for Dark Angels, and paint them as Blood Angels, and it would still be fine. You could do the same thing with Space Wolves for Blood Angels, and for Space Wolves to Dark Angels, and vice versa. It would make no difference, but they lose something for that. They lose that personality. They lose things like the fact that no one else has got access to the Dark Talon. They lose the fact that the Space Wolves say Stormfang is ours. They lose the fact that the Bile Predator is a variant that is only possible to be taken by the Blood Angels. They lose all of that. Is that more interesting or less? For me, it's less. It's less interesting. Anyway, that went on longer than I meant it to. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did that all make sense? I hope so, because otherwise that was a lot of rambling for absolutely no reason. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to. And as always, there's an affiliate link in the description of Firmament Games, which you can use to support the channel if you would like. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.